Hello out there, everyone in virtual land. So I just want to start with a little disclaimer. So this is my first time doing an online conference where I'm actually recording a presentation. So please bear with me through any technology difficulties I may have. I'm going to do my best. So first I want to start by saying it's an honor and a privilege for me to share part of my recovery story and advocacy work with all of you. A huge thanks and shout out to Pam Lanhart and Shelley Young for all of their hard work and really for asking me to be a part of the Family RX conference. I really love their tagline or their phrase here they use for the conference: healing medicine for families impacted by substance use and mental health issues. So again, thank you guys for letting me be part of this. So let's get right into it. So first question is who is Randy, right? So my name is Randy Anderson, and I'm a person living in long-term recovery. And what that means to me is I haven't had to use drugs, alcohol, or any mood-altering substance since January 9th, 2005. And because of my recovery, I've been able to do a lot of truly amazing things. I'm able to have healthy relationships, complete 5 years of college, obtain 2 college degrees, have a job that I love, I own a home, I vote, and I even pay my taxes. All those things that normal people do, right? So after receiving the life-saving gifts of treatment and recovery, I completed my AS degree in addiction counseling at Minneapolis Community and Technical College in 2015 and worked as a full-time counselor for 2 years at RS Eden House Recovery Services. In fact, the very same treatment facility where I was once a client. I served as a board of directors member for the Steve Rumler Hope Network for 2 years, the organization responsible for passing Steve's Law in 2014. I stepped down as a board member and was hired as the full-time overdose prevention manager in 2018. That required me to train law enforcement, EMS, the public, and really anyone who wants to carry and know how to administer naloxone, the medication used to reverse or needed to reverse an opioid overdose. This February, I took the leap of faith and stepped away from the Steve Rumler Hope Network to start my own business, and Bold North Recovery and Consulting was born. I'm a passionate advocate for recovery and reform. I also serve as a member of the Minnesota Second Chance Coalition Board of Directors. Since being involved with the Second Chance Coalition, I was given the opportunity to testify during the 2015-16 legislative session in front of several legislative committees during the drug sentencing reform hearings. Because of my testimony, and of course that of many others, Minnesota had the most significant change in drug sentencing in nearly 3 decades. I'm grateful and really honored to know that because of those sentencing guideline changes, approximately 700 less people will be incarcerated yearly because they have the disease of addiction. I did go on to complete my BA or bachelor's degree in human services at Bethel University, and I'm also now a licensed alcohol and drug counselor for the state of Minnesota. So just a quick disclaimer, the words that I say or statements that I make today are that of my own. I do not speak on behalf of any organization I work for or volunteer with. So just to get that legal logistics out of the way. So I'm gonna start with a video. This video is kind of clips from a few different documentaries. So the Anonymous People, Generation Found, a couple different rallies in DC. But I think this kind of hits home or starts the conversation about like why advocacy is important and what it's about. So I wanted to thank Greg Williams for providing me with this clip and letting me use this. So here we go.
There's nobody in this country anymore who can say they don't know somebody who has suffered or suffering from an addiction.
There's a lot of us. Everyone knows somebody, whether it's a family member, a friend, a sibling. We all know somebody.
Almost 80% of the people now have understanding. If you ask them, they'll say that addiction is an illness, but they still think that large degree that it's a choice at the same time. So they're ambivalent. On one hand, they say it's illness. On the other hand, they say, oh, Johnny can choose to have the illness or not. Like I went to the store and bought an illness, you know.
The stigma is they're doing it because they want to. And my experience is I didn't become a drug addict because I wanted to.
When I was a little girl playing in the sandbox, being an alcoholic was not a goal. I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be a writer. But alcoholic wasn't on the list.
There's so much shame, private shame, and public intolerance of and public policies that are against addicts and alcoholics.
In some respects, the media is difficult for us to battle against because the negative news about addiction is dramatic. Rarely do you hear a piece on the news about someone who celebrated 10 years of recovery or 20 years or 50 years of recovery. And we all know those people, but that is not dramatic. That doesn't make the news.
Every time you see somebody in recovery getting well, you know that the community is healing. Families are healing. It's like throwing a rock into the water and that ripple effect.
It was as if we saw addiction as a sick and dying tree, and that we would dig this tree up and move it all the way over here to another area, maybe even another community, and replant it in healthy soil and give it water and fertilizer and sun and nurture it and love it back to health. And when it came alive again and became vibrant, we would dig it up and bring it back and replant it into the same hole, and then be shocked when the tree began to get sick again. It's time we began to not just treat individual trees, but to begin to treat the soil as well.
All right, that's I just love that clip or that compilation of a few different things to show some examples. Oops. So next thing we're going to get into is just a little bit of why. So why is recovery important? So this is a survey done by the Recovery Research Institute. Dr. John Kelly is who leads that organization. They're out in the East Coast. Amazing organization doing some amazing work. So I suggest looking them up. This was from a survey they did, so you could probably Google search Recovery Research Institute Recovery Survey, and you'll find this. So more than 9% of those responding to their survey of a nationally representative sample of U.S. adults indicated they had previously had such a problem, but no longer did. And a little more than half of them reported accomplishing this with some sort of assistance. Only 46% of successful respondents considered themselves to be in recovery. So, and I really want to just quick stop there for a second. I think when we talk about, in this instance, when we talk about recovery, it's somebody that had a substance use disorder. So the individual, I think the definition of recovery should be expanded a little bit more, is to include those of family members or loved ones or significant others. Because sometimes, I mean, not sometimes, all the time or most of the time, the person with the disorder or the illness suffers greatly, don't get me wrong, but a lot of times the family is suffering as much as the individual, if not more. And like Pamela says, she's a person in recovery from her family recovery. And I think that's important to talk about as well, because that lived experience itself is different than my lived experience with a person with a substance use disorder. So it's been estimated that as many as 80 million Americans deal with some sort of alcohol or other drug use problem, around 22 million of whom meet the criteria for a full substance use disorder, such as alcoholism or opioid addiction. Almost 54% of those who reported resolving an alcohol or drug use problem used some kind of assistance. Most commonly used was self-help support groups like Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous. Next most commonly used were professional medical treatment, including the use of anti-craving, anti-relapse medications, either in an inpatient or outpatient setting. About 20% used other recovery support services, which it could include or included sober housing, recovery community centers, and faith-based groups. A significant number, or 37%, used two or more types of assistance in combination with each other. So I think that's important to talk about. We talk a lot of times about the multiple pathways of recovery, or to recovery, and not one it's like any other medical condition. There's not one answer, one solution, or one pill, or whatever it may be to fix this problem. It usually takes a combination of things like any other disease does. So that's just a quick example of this survey. The survey is a little bit more in depth. You can see a lot of the statistics there. You're welcome to look it up. So I want you all, in your own mind now, to think about, close your eyes if you need to, like, what does advocacy look like to you? Or when you hear the word advocacy or an advocate, or what might you envision that looking like? I'm just going to pause for a second and let everyone think about that. All right, so now you hopefully have some sort of idea in your head of what advocacy looks like, or what it is. So the next clip I'm going to play is it's from the Anonymous People. So again, if you haven't seen this documentary, I highly recommend it. When I first saw this in 2014, it really changed my life. I really found, wow, there is this recovery advocacy movement, or recovery movement, happening in our country. And I really wanted, after watching this movie and then flying to DC in 2015 for the Unite to Face Addiction rally, I really wanted to become part of it. So this is where there may be some technical difficulties. I just want to pre-warn everyone. So I'm going to change to a different sharing screen. I've been having issues with viewing the video clip. You'll be able to hear it just fine, but I'm not exactly sure you'll be able to see it when the finished product is done. This is my 4th attempt, so we will see. So here we go. So we're in a new share. We're going to go to the Anonymous People and share. We're going to hit play.
The finger that points at me will help somebody else get sober. I'm not ashamed of it.
It was a phenomenal event. It included people like astronaut Buzz Aldrin, included actors like Dick Van Dyke and Gary Moore, baseball stars like Don Newcombe and Ryan Duran, politicians like Congressman Wilbur Mills, Senator Harold Hughes, and others.
People who this country dearly loved, and we're so shocked to see these individuals sort of stepping out of the shadows and announcing themselves as people in recovery. An enormous turning point in the history of not only advocacy, but in the history of attitudes towards alcoholism.
I think all these illustrious individuals who are here are hoping that the stigma that's always been attached throughout history to the disease of alcoholism will be somewhat removed. This might be the beginning. It is a disease.
It was folks tired of being blamed and being shamed, and wanting very much to be seen in a positive light, angry, because advocacy is about anger, and knowing that by their voices being heard around the world, you give voice to others.
The message here.
All right, so that's the part. So I really wanted to, again, I'm not sure if you saw the video. If you didn't, I apologize, technical difficulties. For me, that clip is really great. Again, it's from the Anonymous People. But when she says angry or anger, advocacy is about anger. And I couldn't agree more. I think the difference is a lot of times when we do advocacy, we learn to harness that anger and use it in a different way. Sometimes though, we use it in a way where we are angry. I mean, I've led protests and rallies around the country where I'm angry, I'm mad, and I let that come out through my voice, which you'll see a little bit of here in a minute. So let's go back to the other one and see if this can work. All right, here we are. So we're back again. So I want to move on. So what is advocacy? So you all if I had you think about it for a minute, envision in your head, maybe a definition. So this is one definition that I found. So advocacy is the act of pleading or arguing in favor of something, such as a cause, a policy, or interest, active support of an idea. So that's just one definition of what advocacy, I mean, if you have a different view of it, or you can look it up, and there's a bunch of different, but this is just one that I really found that kind of encapsulated the whole idea of advocacy. So who can be an advocate? So honestly, everyone can be an advocate. So again, I just went online and I pulled some definitions. When I searched the word advocate or advocacy, these are some of the things that came up. So an advocate is a person who publicly supports or recommends a particular cause or policy. Advocacy is taking action to help people say what they want, secure their rights, represent their interests, and obtain services they need. Advocacy is a deliberate process of speaking out on issues of concerns in order to exert some influence on behalf of ideas or persons. Advocacy is speaking up, drawing a community's attention to an important issue, and directing decision makers towards a solution. So I think, so if you look at all those, I mean, those are, to me, when I think of advocacy and I read these, it's action. Being an advocate or advocacy is some type of action we take, right? It is associated with action. That may be a verbal action, maybe a physical action, but it's some sort of action. So I have a 3-step process. I think it's 3 steps. And so the first one is showing up. I think that's step 1. So, you know, sometimes we can just have an impact just by being there. So I just remember the first time I walked into our state capitol building, or my state capitol building in Minnesota. It was 2014. It was at Minnesota Recovery Connections Recovery Day on the Hill. Here I was, 43 years old. I had never been in that building, our building, my building. I have to admit, I didn't even know I was allowed, especially after prison with 3 felonies. Yes, I have 3 felonies, and I'm not ashamed of that. I did things during my active addiction that were against the law, and I got caught. My dear friend, Emily Baxter, the founder of the organization called We Are All Criminals, believes, and I completely agree, 1 in 4 Americans have a criminal record, 4 in 4 have a criminal history. And the only difference between me and you is I got caught. I paid what I, and most, consider a pretty steep price for my crimes. I was sentenced to 87 months in prison as a first-time non-violent drug offender with no criminal history. I often get asked, do you regret the things you did? And if you could go back, would you do anything different? And sorry, this part gets me every time. I do regret hurting my family, my friends, my loved ones along the way. Would I do anything different? If I did, I wouldn't have the lived experiences to help those like me. So no, I really don't think so. One thing I know I didn't do in active addiction is show up. And I want to, let's talk about showing up for just a second. So when we show up, and this doesn't have to be, again, the person suffering, right? So a family member or a loved one, when they're dealing with their family member or loved one's addiction or substance use disorder, they're so caught up in the chaos, and their life is directed and revolves around that chaos. And they don't show up oftentimes too. They're not available. They make excuses for why not to be someplace. So it's not, again, it's not always the individual this affects. It can be the loved one, the family member, the significant other, whatever it may be. So it's critical that when in recovery, we show up when we say we're going to, and not looking for excuses not to show up. There are many times that just being present without speaking, one is actually advocating. By just being present, you are showing your support for the issue or cause. So yeah, so simple, just show up. So continuing more with step 1, we keep showing up. It can be really simple just to show up whenever possible. A mentor of mine once told me, either you have a seat at the table or you're probably on the menu. I'll have you know that I'm not on anyone's menu. The statement keeps ringing in my head. So Randy has made the next logical decision for me, or next logical step, and that's I've decided that I'm actually going to run for political office. So I'm starting a campaign in Minnesota in 2020 to either run for Minnesota House of Representatives or the Minnesota Senate. And what that means is I'll start a campaign in 2020, and I'll hopefully, not hopefully, I will be taking a seat in one of those bodies in either 2022 or 2024. No, I haven't figured it all out just yet. I'm sure I'll need a ton of help, and I'll be looking to my recovery community for that help. And I'm sure I'll have no problems recruiting all of you when the time comes, right? I knew I could count on you guys. So that's step 1. So step 2 is we speak up. So this particular incident here, a friend of mine, I think it occurred in 2017. She was taking her friend on a college tour of the University of Minnesota campus. Her and I worked together a lot on the prescription and opioid problem. And she took a screenshot or a photo of these pill bottles and sent them to me. And she said, "Wow, Randy, I can't believe they're selling something like this at the college where my daughter's about to enroll and go to." And I thought, wow, we're in the middle of a prescription pill and a heroin problem, and we're, it just seems so like just everything was wrong with that. So I had decided I'm going to do something. And so I decided maybe just easy, we're going to start with an email. Sometimes that's just the easiest thing we can do, right? So I went online, I Google searched president of University of Minnesota, I Google searched president of the college bookstore, and I found their email addresses, which pretty easy to find people's email addresses if you Google things. Google's my friend. So anyway, so I started this, so I sent this email. So, and sometimes I want to, really the importance of this is just to see how success can be achieved with very little effort. So this is what I wrote. I wrote, Dear University of Minnesota Bookstore, it would appear that you are unaware that our country is in the midst of a severe epidemic from prescription opioid pain medication and overdose deaths, acknowledged by the federal government as the worst drug epidemic in U.S. history. According to the CDC, in 2015, 52,404 people died of an accidental drug overdose, with 33,091 of those from opioid-related drugs, which includes prescription pain medication and heroin. Drug overdose is now the leading cause of accidental death in this country. The studies show that 4 out of 5 of those that became addicted to heroin started with a legal prescription, either prescribed to them or prescribed to a friend or loved one or family member from their physician after an injury or a medical procedure was performed. These items you are choosing to market and sell to the public for profit, which include the prescription bottle golf balls, will most likely only promote more drug use. Do you have any idea of the message your bookstore is sending to those who have suffered the loss of a loved one due to a drug overdose? Have you not seen the countless number of media reports on overdose deaths from prescription pain medication, including our very own beloved rock and roll icon Prince? As an educational institute with an outstanding public record, you have a moral responsibility in what type of products you sell to the public for profit. I work as an alcohol and drug counselor in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I can tell you firsthand the havoc addiction has on the individual, the family, the community, the healthcare system, and the country. I implore you to do the right thing and cease selling these items or any similar items immediately. I'm actually attending a conference this weekend on the University of Minnesota campus about addiction, and I will share these images with all of those in attendance if necessary. So that was the message. So one thing I want to point out here, it's important when we are advocating or doing advocacy for any particular cause or issue, no matter who we're contacting about that cause or issue, that we keep our message the same. No matter what, we always want our messaging to be identical. So anyways, I sent that email late at night, probably 9 or 10 o'clock at night. That's late for me. And when I woke up the next morning, or not woke up, but by about 8:05 a.m. the next morning, I had received an email response from the bookstore. And so it said, Mr. Anderson, thank you for the instructional email regarding drug addiction and overdose. Regarding the golf balls and a mock prescription bottle for sale in the bookstore, no harm was meant. The university and its bookstores do not promote or support drug abuse, and we appreciate your comments in bringing this to our attention. The bookstores work hard to provide a safe, inclusive, and satisfying experience for all guests, and feedback like this helps us do a better job. The products you mentioned have been removed from the sales floor. Thanks again for your message. Wow. So see how that was really simple, right? I sent out an email. They did the responsible thing, and after being educated about the topic, they decided that was not good for them to be marketing and selling items like this, what that could do to an individual. They were removed. So it's really easy. Success occurred very simply in this case. So sometimes we stay on the topic of keep speaking up. So sometimes we need to a little more action needs to be taken. So this action incident here, or this campaign that I took on, actually occurred prior to the University of Minnesota one, but I wanted to start with one that was really simple and now move into one that took a little bit more work. So one Sunday morning in October of 2016, I was sitting at my computer, grabbed my coffee, started to cruise social media, and I saw this image of a backpack with prescription pills on it. And so it looked like a kid or a young lady or a young person carrying a backpack. And I was like, is this a real thing? Really shocked to the point of offended by it. especially what was going on in our country with prescription medications and overdoses. So I did a little research. I found out this is a real thing. It's called a capsule collection. It was being carried by Nordstrom's and Saks, and they were marketing all kinds of clothing and accessories that were prescription pills and prescription drugs and all this stuff. So I decided an email probably is in order. So here's what I wrote. I just wrote, "Dear Nordstrom CEO and buyers, it would appear that you are unaware that our country is in the midst of a severe epidemic of opioid addiction and overdose deaths, acknowledged by the federal government as the worst drug epidemic in U.S. history. According to the CDC, in 2014, 47,055 people died of an accidental drug overdose, with 29,467 of those from opioid-related drugs, which include prescription pain medication and heroin." So pause there for a second before I continue. So those that aren't confused about dates, so I did say in the previous one, 2015, and this one, 2014, again, because this actually occurred for me first, and the University of Minnesota one came after. I'll continue. So drug overdose is now the leading cause of accidental death in this country. The studies show that 4 out of 5 of those that became addicted to heroin started with a legal prescription from a physician, either for them or for a loved one, family, or friend, after an injury or medical procedure was performed. These accessory items you are choosing to market and sell to the public for profit, which include the pill bottle shoulder bag and the capsule crossbody bag, will most likely promote more drug use. Do you have any idea of the message your company is sending to those who have suffered the loss of a loved one due to drug overdose? Have you not seen the countless number of media reports on overdose deaths from prescription pain medication, including the rock and roll icon Prince? Do you have no moral responsibility in what type of products your company promotes for public use? I'm one of the lucky ones who has not yet lost a loved one to this epidemic. I work as an alcohol and drug counselor in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I can tell you firsthand the havoc addiction has on the individual, the family, the community, the healthcare system, and the country. I implore you to immediately remove these items and their images from any and all sales locations. Until these items and images are removed, I and all those I know will not patronize your business. In fact, I will be sure to tell everyone or anyone I come in contact with that they should not do business with any company that so blatantly promotes drug use and perpetuates the stigma of addiction. All right, so I sent out that email, and their response was, "Thank you very much for your feedback in regards to the Machino collection items that we carry. We can't speak on the behalf of the designer or their intentions with this collection, as fashion is subjective, which is why we carry a wide range of diverse products that meet the very different taste of our diverse customers. Once again, I appreciate you taking the time to contact us and assure you that I've passed on your feedback to the correct department regarding this collection, and do sincerely apologize about the concern this has raised for you." So, yeah, that wasn't good enough for me. Just acknowledging me was fine and passing it on, but I really wanted more. I was hoping for more action than that. So I had decided, I had signed and been part of a lot of change.org petitions. So I thought maybe I should try to do a change.org petition. So I filled out the petition. You can see the little bit of the corner of it, part of it up in the upper right-hand corner there. And at that time, Facebook had a little different algorithms and way things worked. And I literally spent about 5 hours that Sunday morning having my coffee, and I shared my change.org petition to over 3,000 Facebook pages and groups and whatever else I could find, anyone and everyone that I could share it with. And everyone I tagged Nordstrom's, also Saks was carrying it. Saks, a little different. They didn't really care, didn't respond, but I tagged them in every post to make sure that they were getting alerts that this was occurring. I even took to Twitter with it. I started doing stuff on Twitter. So mainly this whole campaign took place on social media. So between Facebook and Twitter is where it took place. So, I mean, this thing blew up. So within 12 hours, I had 500 signatures. Within 24, 1,000. It just that quickly escalated. That Monday, I think it was late morning or early afternoon, a reporter from the Star and Tribune contacted me. So Mary Lynn Smith, and you can see her article to the left there. She said, we saw your article. Of course they saw it because I shared it to their social media pages and tagged them in some posts on Twitter and Facebook. And we'd like to know more about this. So what is going on? So I ended up doing an interview with them that day. They ran the story that night. It was actually in the paper the next day as well. And from there, it took off like nobody's business. So the Associated Press picked it up. It ran, I mean, it was in Time, LA Times, everywhere. I mean, it was really blowing up at that point. NPR, all of those places. I think what happened though is Wednesday morning, I went into work and there was a voicemail on my phone saying, good morning, Mr. Anderson. This is Christina Corbin from Fox News, New York. We saw your online petition and we would like to know if you'd be interested in doing an interview. So at first I thought this is a joke, like first of all, how did Fox News New York get my work number? Well, again, we have the internet and Google. I just thought there's no way they're contacting me about this. So I call them back and sure enough, person answers the phone and you can see that part of one of her articles right there in the middle. Good morning, Christina Corbin. I said, hi, Christina, Randy Anderson from Minneapolis. She was like, oh, thank you for returning my call. So we saw your petition and we did some research and and they are just a block or so down from Nordstrom's and a Saks location. But anyways, they went down, looked at them and thought, wow, this is kind of a big deal. So I ended up bringing in a couple other folks to do the interview with me on Chris Johnson, Dr. Johnson from Minnesota, who's expert on opioids and this whole epidemic. Judy Rumler, who started the Steve Rumler Hope Network. So we all worked together to do this Fox interview, news story, and they ran the story that night, like right away, that afternoon, that early evening. The next day, now I'm near 4,000 signatures too at this point, by the way, so it had really picked up steam. And the next day, about 10 a.m. or so, I get a call from Christina from Fox News. And she says, Mr. Anderson, Randy, I just have great news for you. I just got off the phone with Nordstrom, and they decided to pull the entire clothing line from all stores and online locations. And that's the second article. Then they did a follow-up article, and that's the one you're seeing on the page here. I was shocked. I thought, no way did this actually work. Like, I got an entire national retailer to remove a clothing line and an accessory line because of this. And I thought, I was just amazed. Like I used to be, back in my addiction days, I used to have a pretty cynical view, and I believe that one person, one vote, one voice doesn't really make a difference. And then I did this, and I really proved myself wrong, that one vote, one voice, one person can make a difference. You have to gather people into your cause, and there's creative ways to do that. I had signatures from some 14 different countries, and it was amazing because I get an email every time, and I could not believe the amount of support I got for this. Some pushback, people saying things like, we're a capitalist country, people can sell whatever they want, and all this stuff, and it's the addicts, let them die. I mean, things some people are really heartless when it comes to this, and mainly because they probably haven't been impacted yet by it. And I say the word yet because someday, hopefully they won't, because I don't want anyone to know what I know or feel what I feel. I mean, when you lose friends or loved ones to overdose or see them in addiction, it's not a pleasant thing to have happen. So I don't wish that upon anyone. But anyways, so this occurred. I couldn't believe it. It worked. About 30 minutes later, I actually received my own email from Nordstrom's directly, and I don't remember it word for word, but the basic premise of it was, Mr. Anderson, after further reviewing what has occurred, and we are a family business, we've decided to do the right thing, and the right thing is to remove the clothing line and accessory line from all of our stores and online locations. And I just always remember the last line in that email, and it said, "We hope this resolves the matter for you." And I thought that is hilarious. Yep, it resolved it, at least with Nordstrom's. We still went after Saks a little bit. They didn't budge. They didn't care. But whatever, a win's a win. I was really happy that we were able to, that I was able to start that, and we were able to have that kind of impact. So that step 2 is still speaking up. So sometimes though, we have to speak louder. So this is where I was talking about earlier, where I've led many rallies and marches, and sometimes we just need to be loud. We need to have our voices be heard. So the Fed Up Coalition, founded by Judy Rumler, holds an annual rally or march each year in DC. And for the last several years, I've taken on the role of lead rally marshal. My involvement with FedUp has helped me discover that sometimes we need to be loud so our voices are heard. I've led protests outside the White House twice, Purdue Pharma headquarters in Stamford, Connecticut, the makers of OxyContin, the Arthur M. Sackler Gallery, which is part of the Smithsonian Institute in DC. I've also helped organize local rallies in front of the U.S. Federal Courthouse in Minneapolis and outside of Fox 9 studios in Eden Prairie, Minnesota. And one that's not in my notes here, but the one in the upper right-hand corner, that was just this most recent one. That was outside of the Health and Human Services building in downtown Washington, D.C. We were there. The FDA has an office there, so we were there protesting the FDA. We dropped an 800-pound stainless steel heroin spoon. If you can see the handle on it, if you look at it closely, it's actually the FDA logo is engraved in the handle. So that was really cool. I got to be part of that with Ryan Hampton and Dominic Esposito, the Opioid Spoon Project. So that was my latest one. That was really a great day too. We had Secret Service there. We had Homeland Security there. We had DC Police. If you've never been to DC, I think they have 5 or 6 different police forces. I think we had them all present at this particular rally. But it was really cool. Again, I think we had a good impact. It made national news. You drop a big 800-pound stainless steel spoon in front of a building and you draw some attention. So that's just another example of a rally that I was asked to, and I'm grateful that I got to participate in. So speaking up, that's step 2. So step 3, or the next stage sometimes, is we actually have to stand up. So yeah, so this particular incident, a little background on this one. So for those of that don't know, so there's an organization called the Addiction Policy Forum. So Addiction Policy Forum formed a partnership in late 2017 with an organization called PhRMA, which is PHRMA, Pharmaceutical Research Manufacturers of America. So who they are is they're the lobbying arm of the pharmaceutical industry. So if you look up PhRMA, again, PHRMA, and I'm getting that wrong, and I apologize. If you look them up though, Pharmaceutical Research Manufacturers of America, you would look at their board of directors or their leadership, and it's a person, a CEO or CFO or someone in a high executive position with every major pharmaceutical manufacturer in the country. And so they have this group that does most of their lobbying and their advocacy and things like that. So Addiction Policy Forum had taken millions of dollars from them. We don't know how much in 2018 yet. We do know in 2017 that they received nearly $4 million. And up to that point, like Addiction Policy Forum had kind of been identified as a national organization that really was representing the recovery people at the White House and other large, important places. Then I started to dig a little deeper, and I had found out that the CEO of Addiction Policy Forum was also the president of a large lobbying firm called the Brimley Group. Well, if you look up the Brimley Group, their largest client, or the client that they get the most money from, is the pharmaceutical industry. So I thought, wow, something's wrong here. You can't be taking money from the pharmaceutical industry and then lobbying. So I thought, wow. So I started to dig a little bit more, and I found out that, so now here we have an organization and a president or CEO that's being invited to testify at congressional hearings. They're being paid by the pharmaceutical industry. However, they're trying to tell Congress, our Congress, how to spend my tax dollars. And I thought, well, this is not okay. So a friend of mine had said, there's this, the CEO is testifying at a congressional hearing. I think you should fly to DC and disrupt her testimony. And I thought, at first I thought, wow, I can't do this, like, for a lot of reasons. One is I've testified at hearings, and I thought, I could never be that person that disrupts someone, because I've seen that. And I thought, wow, that's really offensive. However, so I decided I would at least consider the idea. So I Google searched how to disrupt a congressional hearing, which you'd be surprised at some of the videos you might see, people in chicken suits and whatnot. But I wanted to do it in the most respectful way possible. So I learned, I learned a few things, and I just decided to do it. I flew out a couple days after my birthday, and then so we're gonna watch this video. So here we go again. Hopefully technology works with me. We're gonna go with new share. We're gonna go with the video.
Ms. Stacy Bowen, CEO of the National Indian Health Board, and Ms. Alexis Horan, Vice President of Government Relations, Clean Slate Centers. Again, thank you all for being with us today. Ms. Olsen-Nickel, you're recognized for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you so much, Chairman Burgess and Ranking Member Green.
Received millions of dollars from Parliament. Would ask the audience to please be seated and allow our panel to be heard. If the gentleman does not sit down, I'm going to instruct Capitol Police to remove you from the hearing room. The gentleman will sit down.
We are already using.
Gentlemen will be seated. This gentleman will be seated. This gentleman will be seated and allow our panel.
I would like to know. We've asked the question, no one will tell us. So I figured I'd fly you to ask.
Gentlemen will be
how
seated.
many millions of dollars has the Addiction Policy Board received from the pharmaceutical industry?
Can I ask committee staff to ask Capitol Police to give us some assistance in getting the gentleman to be seated?
I will leave on my own. Thank you.
Ms. Halsey-Nickel, you're recognized for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, for your leadership on this important issue that's facing so many families and communities nationwide. My name is Jessica Halsey-Nickel, and I'm the president of the Addiction Policy Forum. I started the Addiction Policy Forum to bring patients, families, stakeholders across the country together to advocate for a comprehensive response to addiction, including prevention, treatment, recovery support, overdose reversal, criminal justice reform.
All right, so that's the video. So let me get back to my other screen here really quick. Thank you all for your patience. So sometimes extreme measures are required to accomplish the goal. So on March 22nd, 2018, just 2 days after my 48th birthday, I flew to our nation's capital in the middle of a snowstorm to disrupt the testimony of the CEO from Addiction Policy Forum at a congressional hearing. Addiction Policy Forum has received an undisclosed amount of money from the pharmaceutical industry, believed to be in the tens of millions of dollars. The CEO was set to testify in front of the United States House Committee on Energy and Commerce. So that's the committee that you all saw. Chairman Burgess was there. That's the committee I disrupted. So the goal was to ensure that any entity funded by the pharmaceutical industry, especially Addiction Policy Forum, didn't have any influence with our Congress how to spend my tax dollars to solve the opioid epidemic. At the end of the 2-day hearing, a brief was provided, and nowhere in that document was the testimony of the CEO of Addiction Policy Forum mentioned. In fact, there was no mention of her or that organization at all. So really mission accomplished. So again, for those that will read that, so those that didn't attend the hearing or those committee members that didn't attend, they'll rely on, they may watch some video because this is all on C-SPAN, or they may rely on this brief. There was, I don't remember how many pages, several page brief that was provided to afterwards, and they will rely on that to make some of their decisions. So knowing that that testimony won't be anywhere in that brief and no mention of that organization really is the goal. So I think I had the impact I was looking for. I didn't want Addiction Policy Forum's influence with our Congress how to spend my tax dollars to solve a crisis that had been created by an industry paying them, right? So I think that was the whole point of it. So it was really great. I mean, I never thought I'd be the one to do something like that again. I can never say that again because now I've done it, but I can now I do have a really good understanding of the importance of that and why people do that. So in closing, so I'm not here to say that all advocacy looks like what I've done and accomplished. It's important to pick our battles, or sometimes our battles pick us. I don't promote that anyone do anything that can get them in trouble or arrested, but the reality is sometimes that is a possibility, and one should always weigh the risks before doing anything. So, yeah, so I mean, it's I've been really lucky and successful in some things, and I had another incident where I had a problem on an American Airlines airline flight and got into kind of a heated, well, I was yelled at by a couple flight attendant and a gate agent, and I decided to do something. So I kind of demanded afterwards, when I reported the incident, that they carry Narcan in all of their planes. And after a year, in going back and forth, they finally had made the decision that they are going to carry Narcan. And I could get into that again on another presentation. But just again, I saw something. I saw an opportunity. I took a shot. That one took a lot of work, took almost a year to accomplish, but because of that, now every American Airlines will have Narcan available on it. So if someone overdoses in the skies, they won't die. So again, just another thing that I think, again, that my wife says, how do you get yourself into these things? I said, I don't know. I think they picked me. But you can be successful, and not everything I've done has been successful. And again, I always want everyone to be cautious enough to protect yourself. So that's the end, folks. Thank you for participating and for following along and listening to my presentation. I hope you get a lot out of it. If you need to contact me, my contact information is on the first and last slide of this presentation. Please feel free to do. You can email me, text me, call me at the number, whatever you want to do. Again, I'd like to give a big shout out to Pam Lanhart and Shelley Young for putting on this conference and providing people with another outlet or another way to gather resources. Because a lot of people can't travel around the country and go to conferences. They don't have the funding, the means, or even know when they're participating. So this is a really great way to do that from your own living room. So again, thank you guys for putting this on. I'm grateful to be part of the Family RX conference. And with that, I'll sign off. Thank you all.